Access Fort Wayne offers reflections of our community. Production facilities provided by Access Fort Wayne are a service of the Allen County Public Library. The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily represent those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting organizations. For more information about creating your own television program with Access Fort Wayne, call 421-1250.
Hello, and welcome to our show, The American Veteran. I'm Dale Parrish, your host. Carl Fowler is co-host, and also sitting in with us today is Ted Blanford, an Iraqi veteran. Next show, we'll be talking to him. Our guest today is Bob Ihrie. He's the coordinator right here at Fort Wayne Access. Welcome to our show, Bob.
Well, thank you very much.
Before that, I might say he was a Vietnam veteran.
Yeah.
Anyway, Bob, what's the best duty, the Vietnam or the public access here?
Depends on who you're dealing with. You know, I would say this is a better duty, but I certainly I enjoy the people I work with here. Yeah. And the same reason I enjoyed parts of Vietnam, anyway, is because of the people I dealt with, you know.
Yep. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Good people.
Yeah. You miss the excitement, though, huh?
Sometimes, you know, it was actually, it certainly left you breathless and happy to be alive when it was over with.
Sure.
When was you in Vietnam?
I went in the Marines April 68, got to Vietnam, whenever that would be, late September, I guess, and went around until late September again.
Yeah.
I had like 54 days to go before I got blown away, so.
Before you got blown away?
Yeah. I hit a booby trap. Somebody else hit a booby trap and got a bunch of us, and got hit in the arm and the lung, but
wow.
Then they just shipped me home, gave me an early out. So.
I'll be darned, yeah, well, then you lucked out.
Yeah,
really.
It was I still got a little piece of my lung, and so I'd never tell if I'm getting a lung X-ray, I'd never tell anybody beforehand. So they go, oh my God, what is that?
The Lucky Charms.
Yeah.
Those are called $1 million wounds.
Yeah, I've seen some other ones. You know, a guy got hit right behind his knee. He'll heal up, but he'll be out of the service, and was in country like 2 days. You know.
Yeah.
Those things happen, but the other way happens also. You know, where they don't come back.
Yeah. Oh yeah. What was I understand Marines all have the same MOS. Is that right?
Well, basically, All Stars 0311. You know, rifleman. Yeah. And I was in 0311 when I went over. And then the thing about Vietnam, it was so different from other wars, is that you went over as an individual. Huh. You didn't know where you were going. I knew I was in the 1st Marine Division. That's 10,000 guys. Yeah. But went over on a Continental Airlines jet with stewardesses. Mm-hmm. We land in Da Nang, and they said, 1st Division guys this way, and you go down and figure out what regiment you go into. It's in 5th Regiment, went down there, figure out which battalion you're in. It's 3rd Battalion, so I get in a helicopter and they fly me down to Anhua. And I get to the battalion, they say H&S Company, which I never even heard of. You know, Headquarters and Services Company. And then get there and I say 81's platoon. You know, so I became put in the 81 millimeter mortar platoon. Hadn't even seen a mortar, you know, but you don't really, if you go through schools or anything, it's where they need you, you know. So
That's called on-the-job training.
yeah, yeah. And Knopfsinger and I, who in BITS, Basic Infantry Training Services or whatever, the last thing before you go over, last training before you go over, we used to go to Long Beach at this Holiday Inn, in the tiki room, and we'd drink there on the weekends. And all the wives and girlfriends came out the weekend before we shipped out, and Knopfsinger's wife said, I'll give you $200 if you get him back alive, from Vietnam, just being kind of joking. And it turned out that Knopfsinger and I both landed in the same, he was a gunner and I was an A gunner on the 81s, So weird things happen. But so that was my 0311 MOS, became a mortar man.
Going in as an individual, did they treat you like like they didn't
Well-
want to know you or didn't
Well,
want to get to know you?
I think with anything, when a boot comes in, you've got to make yourself known to everybody else. They aren't going to treat you like an equal until you prove yourself.
Sure.
Excuse me. And then we were talking earlier about nicknames, and once you were bestowed a nickname by the guys who were there, for 7-8 months, then you were part of the
You
group,
belong. Yeah. Yeah.
You said 7-8 months. It seems like the aging process. The old man was the guy that's there for the 9-month mark of his tour, from what I understand.
I turned 22 over there, so I was one of the old guys. But when I got there, I had this California pink suntan, and new utilities and everything. So the guys who were there looked like they were 37, 40 years old. They've been in the bush, and you look at their eyes, and you knew that, well, this guy knows a lot more about this than I do. And if you're smart, you'll pay attention to what they say.
Yeah.
Some of the guys come in, they're just all, gung-ho and everything, and those are the guys they put down right away. If you're acting like John Wayne and you haven't been where John Wayne's been, where he was in the movies anyway, they don't want anything to do with you.
Training's just the foundation. You
Oh, yeah.
got to listen to your NCOs and your officers
Yeah.
that have been in the bush for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. You better.
They definitely are mentors.
Oh, sure,
in
yeah.
that sense, I mean,
Yeah.
who else you going to learn from?
Yeah.
Except the guy that's been there and done it,
And officers were rotating out of companies every 6 months. Really, so it's really the guys that were there, the corporals, the sergeants, especially the corporals and the lance corporals, that had all the knowledge. We didn't put a boot on point. People say, well, you send the boot out on point. No, you don't want the boot out there. You want a guy that knows what he's doing out there, knows what he's listening for, knows what signs to look for.
Yeah.
Because the boot just won't get himself hurt; it'll get everybody hurt.
Absolutely. And the aging process, when you're talking about that experience, training prior to any conflict like that, I would imagine that listening to, in normal society, we think of the mentor being someone so much older than us. Going into a combat zone and you are fresh in country, it could be an 18-year-old PFC or a 20-year-old lance corporal that takes a 28-year-old platoon leader under his wing and says, "Hey, sir, let's really train about what's going on in country, because you know what's going on CONUS, but in country, it's a different game."
Yeah, absolutely. The smart officers, the second lieutenants out of West Point, ask their platoon leaders or their squad leaders what's going on. And if an officer will do that, they'll do anything for him. They will train him up to be a good officer, because it doesn't make any difference what your rank is. Once you get in the bush, it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, sure, sure.
And I think that goes back, as we were talking before, if you go back to the Napoleonic era, the Civil War, First World War, it doesn't make any difference.
Alexander the Great.
Yeah.
The man that stands next to you is the man that protects you.
Yeah,
It's the shield on your left arm, your spear to your right arm, and you lock in. It's the way it is since the beginning of warfare.
yeah. Did you get into any little villages?
Yeah, not too much. There was, you'd run into some villas out there in the Funans, but where we were about 25 miles southwest of Da Nang, so we were out there in the middle of nowhere and about 12 miles from the coast. And we had been there for several years. So out in Arizona Territory, which is where we're in Dodge City and Ganoi Island, those areas were ones that had been fought over again and again and again. So the villagers basically had skied up. They had left and weren't around.
Yeah. And I understand as soon as you guys moved out, they moved in.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was a strange thing in that there was no territory set up.
No front line.
Yeah, no front lines. But a lot of times we knew where they were and they knew where we were. And depending on the situation, sometimes we would move around each other. You know, trying not to come in contact because you figure you can get to a better place to do. It looks like Gettysburg. You know, they weren't planning on meeting at Gettysburg to have a fight, and it just happened. And most things just happen like that.
Patrols of avoidance, so you can find your upper hand. The Vietnam era is something very special to me. I have an uncle that obviously I have a family history in Vietnam as well, and he had mentioned a lot of the same things. On patrol, you would be looking for the high ground, or if you're patrolling for reconnaissance and things like that, it was a patrol of avoidance, and then come back and then plan. Is that accurate?
Yeah, exactly. Because if you're usually as a platoon went on patrol, you know, and a platoon isn't big enough to come up against a company of NVA, and it was all NVA where we were. North Vietnamese Army regulars.
Platoon like 20 something.
Well, it's supposed to be like 70,
Oh,
but it never was. And once Nixon came in, he started to pull groups out, and they weren't replacing the people that were killed or wounded or rotated out. So it got smaller and smaller and smaller. When I was wounded, it got 8 of us, and the company, or the platoon, became so small that they just took. There might have been a squad and a half, and they just put them in the other 2 platoons. So then my company had 2 platoons. So there weren't enough people, even though we had all these divisions over there. Divisions were never at strength.
There always seems to be a problem logistically with personnel and supplies, and attrition. And that was, you mentioned something about putting a boot on point and having somebody new in country. That was always something that was a problem, because you'd have to be you didn't have as many veterans towards the end of the cycle to be able to train the brand new guys. So the brand new guys, the veteran was the guy that has 2 months in country as opposed to 7 or 8 or 9 months in country. And I've had experience where veterans had told me that would cause even more problems as it went along.
Yeah.
It perpetuated itself. Is that true?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Did you run into a lot of tunnels?
We got some, up the mountains. We ran into hospital complexes. I mean, there was like a 300-bed hospital underground, you know.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And the people we were fighting were good, you know. I mean, they were really good. What they had over us was their general officers. You know, they had General Yap, who kicked the French out in 1954. And we had Westmoreland, who just did it all wrong. He just did it all wrong. He tried to do a war of attrition that would never work. They finally figured out, you know, like 10 years after the war was over, how long it would have taken, you know, for his war of attrition to work, and we'd still be there. You know.
Absolutely.
And General Yap was, you know, he just died like 6 months ago or so. And, but he did everything right, you know. And these guys were professional soldiers, you know. They were, they had helmets, they had, you know, the whole thing, and could go really anywhere they wanted to go. And we had to be somewhere where we expected them to be, you know. So it was always, we were always reacting, you know.
Yeah.
The one thing we had that they didn't have, though, was air power.
Air, yeah, air saved us many times, many times. Got shot down in a helicopter, and the OV-10, which is a spotter plane, came in and kept them at bay while another helicopter came in. And this other helicopter was brand new, smelled like a new car. And I always wondered why none of their helicopters have the little round windows in them. And as soon as we got in the helicopter, we started breaking out the windows and firing. It's like, oh, that's why. Of course.
That makes all the sense in the world now. Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, the CH-46.
Yeah, that's what we used all.
Beautiful aircraft.
Yeah.
Beautiful aircraft. I like that.
That's
a
the
lot.
one with the twin rotors.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's not the big one with the twin rotors.
47.
Okay, that's
The Army
small.
has a 47. The
Yeah.
Marine Corps has a 46.
Okay.
The Marine Corps 46 is a little brother, but it's
Okay.
a
Yeah.
fast mobile aircraft. It really is nice.
All right.
So what they used for combat or
No, it was for troop carrying,
Troop carrier.
and everything else, you know,
Okay.
Insertion.
supplies.
Insertion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll put them in there.
And it was interesting watching the difference between Army, where I was working with, and the Marine Corps air assault missions. Is basically the Marine Corps had air assault missions prior to the Army, and they were using the 46s, and they just walk out the back, and we were using the UH-1 Huey, which is we would go side doors, continuous, and the evolution of that insertion to LZs, either hot or cold, was a staple of what the Marine Corps did. You guys, you really did it right.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, you perfected that idea of
Yeah.
the air assault.
Yeah.
In on Mead River, which is the largest air assault that we had, we had lined up in the runway at Anwa, and it was like platoons lined up from one end to the other, and the helicopters came in and took us out and dropped us, and then came back and got more, and we dropped in 5 battalions in like an hour and a half, you know, to form a cordon.
Yeah.
And you would get what, 20, probably 28, 30.
It was supposed to hold 18, but depending, when going in we had 18, coming out sometimes we had a lot more.
Right.
5 battalions equal what, about 1,000 men?
Well, supposed to. A battalion's like 3,000 altogether, or a regiment, and there's 4 regiments in a battalion. So yeah, about that.
What were your feelings as you was being flown in?
Well,
You remember them?
yeah, it was like butterflies for sure.
Yeah.
You never knew what was down there, you know, and as we mentioned before, luck has a lot to do with it. You know, it's like where the helicopters are coming in, where they are, which one they decide to shoot at, you know, and but it's get out, get in a fan shape, and return fire immediately, and it's just you want to lay down a base of fire over them to get their heads down. You know, that's the first thing, is to get their heads down.
Yeah.
If they just run away, fine. You know,
Preferred.
Yeah, you know, it's like with 81s. I used to bring 81s in so close, you know, to our lines, and by intuition, I knew where we were and where to drop them, and scared me just on those, danger close missions I was running myself.
Okay.
You're taking the 81s in by chopper too?
Yeah, we're walking them in. I mean, they call the 81 guys super grunts because
Right.
we stand lines like everybody else, but we're carrying 150 pounds on our back,
Okay, explain to me and the viewers what an 81 is.
81 millimeter mortar, it's probably the best weapon of the Vietnam War, the one most used, because
81
it's a tube.
millimeters, about
It's about like that big.
3 inches.
Yeah. And it's about that high, has a base plate, and it's just a tube with a firing pin on the bottom. You take the round and you rip off the number of bags on it, determining how far it's going to go. A charge 9 goes farther. Drop it in, and it just blops up in the air. And it's scary as heck when they're coming in because you can hear it.
Yeah.
It goes, and so it gets their head down right away, when you start dropping 81s in.
Yeah.
And you mentioned danger close. That's something that, and you learned that in a matter of months.
Oh yeah, it isn't. I kind of went into a zone when there was something going on, and I just knew where, and on the grid map, I'd been over the area so many times, I knew where the maps were wrong, because they might be off 100 yards. These are maps that the French used, and
Insert joke there.
and so I kind of knew where these places were, and I called them in. And we were on top of this mountain once, a place I'd never been. And there was a trail coming down the mountain like that. And it was a thing that was about as wide as this studio and maybe 400 feet long, the top of this mountain. And then it just dropped down like that. And we were getting rounds coming in when the medevac chopper came in. So I took and dropped them on that trail and just dropped them in like this and came right into where we were and off the side of the mountain and around, and we didn't get around. But there was a rock this big, and I was laying down trying to get, because I said, get down, everybody.
Trying to get under it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's friendly, but get out.
Yeah. Coming in too close.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was a great weapon. We got real good at it. We everybody got trained really well, and we put new guys on it quick so they get used to the sound of it and everything.
Like your life depended on it.
Which it did.
Yeah.
I never had any experience at all with the mortar in basic.
Oh, I didn't
course,
either, Yeah, when I was going through training,
Yeah.
I think they fired one once. They fired a 106 recoilless rifle and an 81 and stuff, and so we could watch it, but that's about it.
The only experience I had in Korea was on the receiving end.
Yeah, the 82s.
And that was just once.
Yeah, the 82s, yeah. They were smart too because they could use our rounds in their mortar.
Oh.
They capture our rounds. They could use an 81 and an 82.
I think that was true pretty much, that the enemy always wanted to use our ammo, whether it was rifle, mortar, or machine gun, or whatever.
One of the good things or bad things, I don't know, when we opted to go away from the standard 7.62 on every weapon,
Yeah.
and went to the 5.56 or now the 6.0
NATO weapons.
NATO weapons, is to avoid having our ammo being used against us.
Yeah.
Right.
And we did pretty well with it for a while. But you're right, with our mortars, they do 1 millimeter more, and they can use an 81 and an 82 tube. They do a lot of that with the howitzer rounds too. A 5.5, 55 millimeter, or something like that. So you're right. They did use a lot of our
ammo
against us,
Sure.
especially in the Korean conflict.
Yeah.
Right.
How's that cold?
How's what?
See, I would much rather have been in Vietnam than Korea.
Oh, the cold?
Yeah, you know.
It was cold.
Korea gets really cold. Yes.
Yeah. It was, I wasn't up where it was real cold, up in the chosen reservoirs, but even at the 38th, it got awful cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everything is uphill there.
Yeah.
On that peninsula, it's a lot of mountains, very mountainous.
Yeah.
Well, you dealt with a lot of the mountains as well.
Yeah, we were out for about 3 months in the mountains out by Laos. We were like 100 yards from Laos, and kept taking a mountain and then turning into a fire base, and taking another one, turning into a fire base, and had a big sweep out there on Maui Peak. Taylor Common was the name of it, and so it was it's uphill, but there's no mosquitoes.
Thank God.
Yeah,
Universal. Keep the mosquitoes away.
yeah. And down there was 132 degrees on the day before I got wounded. You know, we were walking through elephant grass. It's like 8 feet high.
Yeah.
And elephant grass is serrated on the edge, so you always had these little paper cuts all over you,
Yeah.
you know.
And that's high humidity too. isn't it?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, so it's,
You lose a little bit of weight.
yeah. Actually, you know, but the sea rats, I think, make you plump.
Yeah.
You know, I was plumper than I am now. Well, maybe not as I am now, but
3,000 calories
Yeah.
per ration.
yeah.
That's quite a bit. But you burn every ounce of
Oh
it.
yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
You've been, when you got all the service, how long was you laid up with your wound?
Oh, not long. By the time I got back to the States, I was basically healed, but I had gotten cellulitis in my toes for wearing shower shoes on the 10,000-mile journey, and I had pneumonia from going from to Anchorage, Alaska, and then down to St. Louis, and so I was laid up for 2 weeks from the trip back. You know.
It's going to be dangerous.
The recovery was more dangerous
Yeah.
than the wounds. Well, we've heard that before.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I got up at Great Lakes Naval Air Station up there, and in casual company, which is you show up for, you know, you're on the road for roll call, and then you're on your own. I had no money whatsoever, so I just wandered around the streets of what is that town? Jack Benny was born there. Anyway, Waukegan.
Yeah.
And it's just like for 2 weeks, you know.
The best fence is being broke.
Yeah.
You weren't going anywhere.
Yeah.
Wasn't buying anything you didn't need.
Yeah, and the two guys that were head of the company, two corporals, were the guys that were wounded. That's why I took over the formula or the FO job, the forward observer job.
Yeah. Well, Bob, we're out of time.
Oh,
Thank you for being on the
welcome. Thanks.
Thank you for your service, Bob.
No, you're welcome.
show. Ted?
Thank you so much.
Ted, appreciate it.
I enjoyed it.
I hope you enjoyed the show. Remember, freedom is not free. So if you see a veteran or someone in uniform, just walk up to them, say, thank you for your service. Thank you, and good night.
do not necessarily represent those